One day, I decided to spend the night in my garage. My garage is well maintained, as my father had it arranged to his specifications. Since both he and I are rather organized, it remains very tidy. All tools are stored on shelves, side tables, and a workbench, with the car covered by a tarp. A small sofa is also available, although it is just right for my needs. The floor is made of concrete, and there are table lamps and overhead lighting. There is also a cabinet for miscellaneous items, including a sink with a tap and bucket. It was a Saturday evening, and I had no particular desire to rush off to friends' places or attend a party. Instead, I brought a few items and a warm blanket with me. Upon arriving at the cooperative, I was greeted by nods and inquiries about my business. The garage cooperative is situated near the city center and comprises approximately 40 units. The local population can be categorized into 3 groups: retirees, my peers, and younger individuals. Everyone behaves quietly in the cooperative, but occasionally, one of the younger members may start playing music with their recently purchased old car stereo system. And thus there are no arguments, no alcohol, so it can be described as a rather boring community. I prepared my sofa, went out for dinner at a nearby restaurant, bought a bottle of water and some cookies at the grocery store, and then prepared for the evening. According to the rules of the cooperative, it is not permitted to stay after 9 p.m. Therefore, I left 5 minutes prior to closing time and climbed over the fence half an hour later. The dogs near my garage simply wagged their tails and laid their heads on their paws as I quietly entered, closed the garage door behind me, turned on the light, spread a warm blanket, and pulled on a heavy sweater. October can be quite chilly. I took out a book and lay down to read. I usually go to bed late due to my profession, which allows me to be completely relaxed. Around 11 p.m., I heard the voice of the watchman. "Billy, Katya, and Seema, come to the kennels." This exclamation was followed by not loud barking and clattering of iron bowls, but by the sound of dogs' footsteps. "Seema," the watchman shouted again. There was silence, and I listened. Not far from my garage, a voice was heard again. The old dog, counting her 5th year here, and she's still as dumb as Katya. Then a disgruntled growl, presumably from this Seema. "Let's go to the booth, it's light there. Katya is there. The whites are already eating dinner. They've been fastened, and now you're on a chain. Otherwise you'll disappear in the dark." I shrugged and turned over. I read for about 10 minutes and then thought about what had been said. Why should guard dogs be chained at night? It's fine during the day, but at night, usually, various people looking for easy money come around. Why is there a chain in place at night? I dismissed this mystery and continued reading. By midnight, I had almost fallen asleep while reading a book when something outside clanked against metal. Again, I listened involuntarily. Again, someone was throwing stones into the garages. It occurred to me that this had been going on for approximately 20 minutes. Occasionally, the sounds were interrupted by stomping in the distance. On a couple of occasions, even the sound of children's laughter could be heard. I soon began to feel uneasy, especially when guard dogs began barking. At the far end of the compound, I rose from the sofa and approached the door to listen. It's right there, I could feel it. A boy's voice sounded out. I do not know how many years one could attribute such a voice to. There was still no fracture like that of a 14-year-old, but there was also no timidity like a 10-year-old's, so it must lie somewhere in between. "Listen, are you sure? Perhaps it is him?" The second voice was also young but much more timid. "No fear." The voice sounded excited. I felt a lump in my throat. What were 2 men doing late at night in the garage area? "You need to get him out, frighten him." "Out of fear, I will find him. Let's have some fun today." The voice gloated. "Look, perhaps he can't even hear us. He is probably sitting somewhere drunk. Let's leave him alone, let him be. I am not hungry. Yes, you never are. You make a lot of noise, you cannot even eat a meal." I heard a deep intake of breath through my nose. There he is, very close. Then there was the sound of metal grinding, as if someone were using a screwdriver on the wall of a neighboring garage. Dogs howled for a long time, and then I heard cries. "Uncle, please open the door. There are dogs here." "Uncle," another voice echoed. "Good afternoon, sir. We would like to request that you please open the garage doors. We did not wish to disturb you, but we are in urgent need of assistance." After a brief pause, someone began banging on the garage doors nearby. We pulled back the doors and heard a timid voice asking us to open them soon. Another voice supported the call for assistance. The sounds of palms striking metal grew louder, and someone shouted for help to remove the dogs. Despite this, we did not open the doors. Something in the voices alarmed us, and after a series of unsettling sounds, everything went quiet. The authoritative voice asked if we had opened the doors, but we did not. Air was drawn in again, and the timid voice pleaded for us not to kill the person inside. It was our own fault, they said. The powerful growl drowned out the timid voice. Yes, but they could have allowed us to enter, but nobody let us in, so you would have destroyed him. I grabbed the handle on the door. My heart became heavy and felt stuck to my chest bones. Suddenly, I realized that I was in trouble. I was afraid. There was laughter from behind me in the garage. "Yes, now I'll bite you," I heard. I pulled the handle and ran out of the garage. In front of me stood the owner of the timid voice, a boy of about 12 years old. His shorts and t-shirt were in tatters, half of his neck was missing, and it was impossible to tell how he was holding himself up. His short arms were gnawed at the wrists and one cheek hung down. There were scratches and bite marks here and there. "Run to the booths," he squeaked through his giant, torn mouth. I screamed back and ran to the booths, not knowing what else to do at that moment. His advice or the presence of dog kennels and a watchman were all that was available to me. From behind, there was a series of growls and howls, whines and barks, which turned into children's malicious laughter. Suddenly, someone jumped on my back and I swayed, falling to the ground. Something grabbed my shoulder and I realized that the sweater had been bitten through. As I rolled along the ground, it became clear that whatever was gnawing at my shoulder was intangible. I could not feel it or shake it off. Bleeding and screaming, I managed to get up and run back to the booth. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a creature hanging off my side, like a timid child, only more skilled. It was an opportunity for desperate resistance, but I did not see its face, only its hair clinging to my shoulder. Screaming and running, the pain in my shoulder grew worse. He clenched his jaw as if he were trying to bite off a piece of flesh. The voice sounded again. It was a timid voice, coming from the left. "Cover your face." I covered my face with my hands and rushed forward. Suddenly a shot rang out. My arms and body were stung by small, painful bites. I screamed louder. The pain in my shoulder had subsided. "Oh my God, are you all right?" "Mother, leave me alone." Several more shots sounded. A howl came from behind. I was crying, my hands were stinging, my shoulder hurt. We called an ambulance and called the boss. They took me to the emergency room. I held on as blood flowed heavily. The doctor checked my shoulder. It seemed to be intact, but my eyes? I muttered that my shoulder and arm hurt. The watchman said that my eyes were fine. Apparently, he judged that by my tears. I clung to his leg and pleaded with him not to leave me. As a result, the security guard had to drag me towards him. Inside his house, I lost consciousness. I woke up in the hospital. It was morning and none of my family or friends knew that I had been there. An unfamiliar man was standing next to the bed on which I lay. Noticing that I was looking around with fear, he spoke softly. "Don't be afraid. They only appear around garages and even then, rarely. But he's alive and he'll recover from rabies. What about your hands? I noticed the patch on them and all over your upper body. It's salt. The security guard has a gun with it loaded. It's good that your sweater was thick and you protected your face with your hands from the shot. He needed to remove it, but the security guard doesn't have good aim. The main thing is that you're alive. But how about your brain? Have you been unconscious for an hour?" I looked at him and understood that he questioned my sanity. To be honest, I also questioned it. About 10 years ago, for some reason, a couple of children climbed into the garage at night and encountered dogs. At that time, it was not a drunk watchman who was sleeping, but hungry dogs. Clearly, the boys could not have anticipated this. Someone was in the garage then, someone saw them. I saw them fleeing from the dogs and closed the door. You know, I didn't even drive away the dogs. Perhaps some kind of madman or simply a creature with an interest, but that person did not let them in, and the boys were ripped to pieces. And I listened, and at that word, the uncle trembled and tears flowed from his eyes. The man placed his arm around my healthy shoulder. "It's all right, it happens. I have seen them myself when the cooperative company was buying them. We also had to establish rules regarding overnight stays. Dogs also get chewed on frequently. Have they taken revenge or what? It's rare for someone like you to be caught. See how badly it turned out. He stood, rubbed the back of his head, and looked at me. Do you intend to go to court? I shook my head and brushed away my tears. What about your injuries? I shrugged. I will think of something. He nodded. If there is anything you want to discuss or any complaints, please let me know by giving me a piece of paper with your contact information. The man sighed and departed. I attempted to sleep, but then a doctor appeared. In a hurry, I came up with a story about a bulldog and a friend shooting at a drunk person to save the dog. The doctor laughed and prescribed me some medication and referred me to several doctors. At home, I concocted even more bizarre nonsense, which everyone somehow believed. The salt ceased bothering me after 2 weeks, and the injury and rabies shot ceased bothering me 6 months later. By the way, I have sold the garage. The garage was found open in the morning, and all the contents had been chewed and damaged. I met with the manager of the cooperative on several occasions in order to calm myself down and not consider myself to be crazy. And, by the way, the scar does not resemble a bulldog bite at all. It is more like the mark of an ordinary human jaw, perhaps a child's,